In this NVivo 15 for Mac tutorial video, we're going to talk about how to work with classifications, and we're going to talk about how you view them after you've already created them, how you add an attribute if you decide later that you need to do that, how you classify cases for the new attribute, how you change the name of an attribute. What if you need to add a new case? What if a new student comes after you've already imported the classification sheet? How can you add that new case? Then how to visualize cases and how to export a classification sheet. So let's get started with reminding us how you view your case classifications. You come down in Navigation View and you click the Case Classification button. And from Detail View, you can either see the classification sheet with all of its attributes and values, or you can just see the list of attributes that you have created. So first, if you are fine with the attributes you have, but you realize that there's been an error in data entry, for example, and maybe Ariel doesn't actually attend school H, there is a way to change that here by using the little magnifying glass. You can click it, and you'll see all the choices that could be chosen for that attribute, and you can correct Ariel's school assignment. So you can change the values that go with a particular case after it's already been imported. Now, what if you decide after you've gotten your data already imported and your classification sheet has already started to be linked to all your files that you actually need to add another attribute? For example, you know the name of the school, but what if you need to put which quadrant of the school district, east, west, north, south, that the school is in? To add that new attribute, come to your case classifications, click on student, and we'll click on it here in list view, and control click. You can add new attribute. So we've got the attribute properties box. I'm going to call it school quadrant. And I'm going to have to create the values here. So I'm going to click the plus button. I'm going to name one east. I'm going to click another plus button, west, north, south, and tell it done. Now you see we have a new attribute that's been created. It's got text choices, east, west, north, and south. And we should be able to go to our classification sheet, and you'll always find a new attribute at the very right-hand part. So you see it's unassigned here. We have our school quadrant, but no values have been assigned. So for each student, you'd have to come in and click on the magnifying glass and choose a school quadrant that was appropriate for that student. Now, what if you have a situation where you've named an attribute when you imported it on your spreadsheet, but for some reason you decide that that name of the attribute needs to be changed? For example, what if instead of school, I realize it should say building here? So the way to do that is to go to attributes, highlight and click on the one that you want to change, and then control click. You'll go to get info, and you get the attribute properties box, and I could change the name of that attribute to building. And you see, oops, I've mistyped it, so I better change that again. I'm going to control click, correct my spelling, and tell it done again. Now, what happens if a new student moves to town and joins one of your research projects after you've already imported the original data classification sheet? You really don't want to delete that classification sheet if you've already spent a lot of time linking other things to the cases. So instead, it's probably quicker just to add one single case to your classification sheet. So you're going to click on your classification sheet, and then I'm going to highlight student. I'm going to control click. It says new case. The new case's name is Debbie, and I can right here give a value, all the values. I can do that right from this box. ELL, we'll say no, and so forth. We could finish that out. So we're going to see the new case appear. There's our Debbie case. And of course, I haven't assigned all of the different attribute values, but I could also assign them from here. So her teacher could be CO, language, English, and so forth. That's how you add a new case. Then, of course, you can attach files to that case just like you do with any of the other cases. Now, one other really interesting thing that's possible is to visualize your cases. Like, for instance, you might want to know how many males and how many females are in your project. So the way to do that is to go to case classifications. When you look in detail view, you need to get to the attributes box, and I'm going to choose, I'll choose school. We'll see how many students are at each school. So I've changed the name there to building. There it is. So I'm going to control click. So what you see here is a hierarchy chart with larger rectangles or squares when there are more students coded to that particular school and smaller ones for fewer students. The way to find out how many students, there's several different ways to do this, but right now we've got attribute values for cases. So if we will hover over that box, it tells us there are 24 students in GV. We come and hover over S. There are 13 students in S school. And we could see that numerically by clicking the summary tab. It shows us the number that are coded to each of those schools. We can also see it as a sunburst. Okay, the final thing that I'm going to show you how to do is how to export this classification sheet, because you may need to, you've updated it in a variety of ways, and you may need to store that securely in another location or share it with other members of your research team. So you're going to go back to case classifications, and we want to get our classification sheet open. Then we're going to look for the Share tab. We're going to click the Export button, and it says Export a classification sheet. Again, we have to decide how we want it to be encoded. I want this to go as a CSV file so that I can open it up in Excel, and we're going to click OK. So classifications are quite powerful because they allow you to, as you code more data, you can start to ask questions about, in a particular category, do girls and boys see this differently? Or do students who are English learners see it differently from students who are not English learners? So it becomes a really flexible way to look at your data in relationship to these demographic categories that we've attached to each case.